Raquel Welch reshaped what it meant to be a Hollywood sex symbol. In the 1960s and 1970s, she stood apart from the era's traditional blonde bombshells by choosing roles that emphasized strength, intelligence, and self-possession. Over time, her cultural impact was undeniable. Empire magazine named her one of the 100 sexiest stars in film history in 1995, and Playboy later ranked her third among the sexiest stars of the 20th century. Yet the image the public adored rarely matched the woman behind it. While the screen presented Raquel Welch as a fiery, sensual temptress, her private life was far more reserved. She was quick to draw a clear line between performance and reality. She once explained that what she portrayed on screen had little to do with who she truly was, describing herself off-camera as understated and deeply uncomfortable with spectacle. In doing so, she touched on a pattern seen in many classic icons, women like Marilyn Monroe or Dorothy Dandridge, whose extraordinary beauty became both their greatest asset and their quiet burden. For Welch, as for many before her, admiration came with isolation, and the very image that made her famous often obscured the complexity of who she really was. Raquel Welch understood something that many people dismiss too easily. Beauty can be both a privilege and a burden. From the outside, pretty privilege looks like an endless advantage, but Welch recognized why so many celebrated starlets, women like Marilyn Monroe, struggled deeply behind the scenes. She saw how being admired for appearance alone could hollow a person out, leading to depression, addiction, and, in some tragic cases, self-destruction. For Welch, it wasn't difficult to see the pattern. Beauty brought attention, but it also brought pressure, isolation, and a relentless loss of self. Welch often returned to the idea that surface beauty was ultimately empty. Speaking to journalist David Gianmarco, she compared superficial allure to a plastic flower, something that looks tempting but offers no real substance. She worried that she had absorbed too much of the way people objectified her, becoming trapped in a narrow definition of sensuality. While she acknowledged that sensuality carried a certain kind of power, she also believed it closed more doors than it opened. When a woman becomes only a fantasy, she said, no one wants to wake up from the dream, and the real person behind it disappears. Even when she posed for Playboy in 1979, Welch maintained firm boundaries. She never agreed to a fully nude shoot, a decision Hugh Hefner later respected and publicly acknowledged. In many ways, Welch helped redefine American femininity. She wasn't the blonde bombshell archetype of the 1950s. She rose to fame in the 1960s as something different: brunette, exotic, and quietly commanding. One of the films that launched her to international stardom featured her with barely 3 lines of dialogue, dressed in the now iconic fur bikini. The camera lingered on her appearance far more than her character. At the same time, Welch refused to do full nudity, frustrating those who expected her to deliver the fantasy advertised on movie posters. She later explained that this disconnect shaped much of her career. Audiences arrived expecting a sultry screen siren, but instead found a witty, self-aware woman often working in comedy. That mismatch led to disappointment, and to Hollywood taking her less seriously. Welch spoke openly about this paradox. In her 2010 autobiography, Raquel, Beyond the Cleavage, she described herself as the Rodney Dangerfield of sex symbols. To Men's Health, she explained that she constantly battled the assumption that beauty equaled emptiness, that she was just a body and little more. Early in her career, she had almost no dialogue, and it took time to accept that this limitation came with the territory. Looking at figures like Marilyn Monroe, whom she deeply admired, Welch noticed the same pattern. Immense adoration, undeniable talent, yet little critical recognition. Comedy and sensuality, she observed, were rarely rewarded in Hollywood, no matter how skillfully they were performed. Rather than retreat, Welch expanded her influence beyond film. In 1984, she released the Raquel Welch Total Beauty and Fitness Program, a book and video series that combined hatha yoga, nutrition, and lifestyle advice, illustrated with photographs by Andre Weinfeld. She also proved herself a savvy businesswoman, launching successful ventures in fitness, beauty, jewelry, skincare, and most notably her widely popular wig and hair collection. While none of these ventures brought her an Oscar, they cemented her legacy as a woman who refused to be defined or limited by how the industry chose to see her. After that final breakup, Welch made a firm decision. She would never marry again. Asked why her marriages never worked, Raquel was strikingly honest. She said she was simply too set in her ways. She enjoyed her independence, her work, and her life as it was. She didn't want or need a man to support her. For her, the issue was autonomy and power. She earned her own living, made her own decisions, and many men, she believed, were uncomfortable with that reality. While the attraction and romance might excite them at first, resentment often followed when she became the center of attention wherever they went. Her perspective was shaped by what she had witnessed in Hollywood. Many actresses of her era were over-controlled, over-sexualized, and trapped in punishing studio contracts that dictated everything, from appearance to behavior to career choices. Walking away wasn't easy. Fame changed their lives so completely that returning to normal existence was nearly impossible. Control, she understood, was often disguised as opportunity. Raquel Welch passed away on February 15, 2023, at her home in Los Angeles after a brief illness. She was 82 years old. To some, that sounded like a long life. To others, and perhaps to Welch herself, it felt far too short. She left behind not just the image of a screen legend, but the voice of a woman who fought fiercely to live on her own terms.